Hi there, I'm Josh. Welcome to our info session for Eaton Arrowsmith School online. Um, I've been working with the program for quite a while, and it's been interesting to see how it's has switched from being more of a in-school based model to an online model. So I'm just going to take you through kind of how we go through the program and why we do what we do and where and when. Um, so we'd love to hear from you after if you have any questions. So we had an info session on our executive function coaching program. That's a great supplement to Arrowsmith. Some of the things we have in common are they're tailored to the individual, goal oriented. We work on executive function skill development to improve quality of life and limit under unnecessary suffering. Both of us, like both sides, have a lot to gain for anyone. Aerosmith is more of the we're going to build the structure of the brain and build new connections within there. With that new potential that you have, executive function coaching can really come in to help build on the goals that you have and help you set up tangible targets to reach those goals. Um, any information or any questions you have about either of the programs, we'll be happy to discuss which one could be right for you. A lot of this, like starting with the brain, and I wanted to highlight this before we really get into anything, because this is where everything really comes from. We do all of our best thinking up here in the prefrontal cortex. In terms of the prefrontal cortex, we're doing our problem solving, time management, organization, detail management, understanding emotion, reading and understanding others' emotions, understanding how we're feeling in certain situations, and really tying in the human world to the data world and taking in new information and making use of it. Right behind that in our brain is our amygdala, which is our fight or flight system, which is kind of deep in underneath. There's a little ball that it's made out of that's quite a bit smaller than the region it's pointing at here. But that is kind of like the gateway towards the rest of the brain. So as information comes in, it passes through our amygdala. Our amygdala is kind of that gatekeeper that can put us into fight or flight situations. But also it's vital to save our life. Like I like to say, if you look right but forget to look left when you're crossing the street and need to jump out of the way, you need the amygdala to really come in to save your life and get you out of the way of that car. You can't really problem solve your way out of that. Like at this rate, at 60 miles an hour, the car coming at me, I have 0.4 seconds to get out of the way. Like you can't think like that. You have to react to get out of the way. So the amygdala is vital in those situations. But sometimes it can get signals where uh, it is in fear or in fight or flight to get us out of situations where we're not actually in danger. And that can just be some overfiring or over connectivity or under connectivity, the prefrontal cortex. Behind that's our memory system, so our hippocampus, which holds on to longer term memories and information. And behind that would be our brainstem. And our brainstem does all the automatic things. Our heartbeat, for example, it communicates with our body to do the things that we don't have to put any attention to. The issue is sometimes when where they've kind of found within brainstem is post-traumatic stress lives there. So the more that we're exposed to stressful situations and can't get away from them, the more we're living in that back part of the brain. The difficulty with that is the back part of our brain is so far from our problem-solving regions that when we're in these states of stress where we can't get out of them, we're stuck in our memory systems and our brainstem. It's hard to get back to problem solving. So that's where sometimes some inaction comes in, the longer that we're creating these connections to the situations that we're overthinking. So a lot of this, the goal of Aerosmith is to really get our, especially online, because we're more extracurricular, we're really focusing on the needs of a couple areas. Um, for executive function development online, we really want to get that thinking process back up into the prefrontal cortex because that's where you're going to be taking in information in the moment and not time traveling and thinking about things from the past or overstressed about things that are coming up in the future. We really want to be able to take in information to manage it, to hold on to solid memories and to problem solve with the information we have. So a lot of the work, I'll use this in terms of the presentation where we do want to stay in that prefrontal cortex. So taking a quick look, we're going to introduce who we are and what Arrowsmith is, provide some registration options, explain how we work with students online, and talk a little bit about why we do what we do and where we start and why we start there. So a little introduction to Eaton Arrowsmith Academy online. So COVID really helped to launch us in 2020. We're Eaton Arrowsmith School at that time. We've all kind of come in under the academy word, which makes more sense for us as of this past year. So we were not online before. We came online because of COVID. There was a lot of discussion in terms of everything moving online within that same year anyway. So the building blocks were kind of set up for that to move quite seamlessly. And since then, we've served over 600 students from over 30 different countries and 6 continents. We're still waiting for that first Antarctica student, if you know anyone. But around the world, we have plenty of class times available to make it work. Like for some classes in some areas, uh, the early morning class is the end of the day after school in Europe. So this does really work for students from around the globe, depending on the time that they need it. Because of our size, we've spearheaded a lot of Aerosmith program online, and the best practice is to serve students from an extracurricular lens. And our remote team loves working with this population. We have staff all over the country from coast to coast, and it's a great way for us to kind of work with people from different areas. In terms of Aerosmith, Aerosmith is a cognitive program based on the principles of neuroplasticity, and we'll discuss neuroplasticity a little bit. And it's designed to strengthen specific cognitive functions that are foundational to learning. So the premise is to change the brain and change the capacity to learn. And to do that, learning capacities are strengthened through targeted cognitive exercises. So we have a suite of cognitive exercises depending on the kind of needs of the student. A capacity-based program, the learner can be modified through utilizing principles of neuroplasticity. So creating strength within the brain. I like to say like the brain doesn't have arms and legs. It can't lift weights. We need to be able to target it in specific ways. And we do that through neuroplastic approaches where we've seen kind of the outcomes kind of start from the start of the program and lead back to research. And the research really pointed to certain areas of the brain that were lighting up in terms of scans, where we knew that these areas were being activated while doing these types of activities, and that could help in X, Y, and Z. So the outcomes, curriculum no longer needs to be modified, and the learners changed, not the curriculum. So it's providing the ability to have more potential within learning or experiencing life rather than needing things to adapt to your needs. And the learner is now able to learn effectively and efficiently with a stronger, more efficient brain. And what this isn't, we don't teach content. We're not teaching skills. We're not using compensations. All of the changes that we're associating is to improve each region of the brain to get to age level, which we call average. And those areas coming up to average allow more of the potential to kind of take hold. So these are our 25-26 enrollment options. We have a number of classes from 6:30 a.m. Pacific time to finishing at 8 p.m. after the 7 p.m. class. So a number of options to be able to engage depending on where you are, and also an independent program for our Simba Relations activity, our clocks program, to be able to work whenever you can. And we do check-ins for that every 1 or 2 weeks. Enrollment options kind of are the full academic year, which is a 10-month year from September to June, or we have month-to-month recurring enrollment. So every month you would be like a new student coming in while you continue in your same class. Just gives you more control with the billing option is the only main difference between those two. And also summer options in July and August. We kind of narrow down our classes in the summer for the purpose of, staff holidays and, we have a lot more students that are in through the school year that really need that break. Some students really like to work through the summer and we have options. Some students like to start in the summer so that they're not starting something fresh while starting a new class in the fall, for example. So it's not as many new things starting at a time. So getting a little bit of a head start in the summer is an awesome way for them to kind of get used to this and have a little bit of extra time to work through the summer. But really, every program is uniquely designed based on the availability. We have new students starting in every month of the year, and registration opens on the 15th for the upcoming month. So when we're working with students online, we use Microsoft Teams. Many people are familiar with Teams. It's one of the two between Teams and Zoom that really, came out of COVID as trusted meeting partners. So we've gravitated toward Teams based on the views. So if you look here, you can see that each class kind of has their own channel, and the teachers and the students kind of work through that channel. There are private channels that the students can see that no other students but the teachers can see, and that's where we're communicating. That's where videos will be launched. Students work with the teacher to start the class where they have the option to build a community with their peers. So we'll work together in a group for about 5 minutes, just making sure everyone has their goals, building some motivation, seeing what needs are at the forefront, and then they'll dive into their own classes. So you are working in a group, but you're not in a group while you're doing your work. You're working individually, and the teacher comes to you. Our classes sit at around 7 to 1, depending on the makeup of the exercises. So some classes, more or less, the average is around 7 to 1. All the teachers have kind of a tablet that they work through. So if I'm talking to you right now, for example, and teaching you a new exercise, I can still see what the other students are working on while they're in the class, so I can jump around and make sure that everyone's getting their needs met. Some students do need more support than others, and we kind of scaffold that in. A lot of students that come to us that are needing more support, however, one of the big goals is building more independence. So we do want to stage in opportunities to self-advocate and work towards that goal. So we do provide that in terms of the ratios to make sure that we're not interfering with flow state as well, but also meeting the goal. The teacher has a tablet that allows them to see the activity of each student, and the students can tag the teacher in a message if they need any support at any time. In terms of the Arrowsmith side, students will be provided with a goal at the start of the day based on their most recent data. So every day you're coming in with a new goal based on the data of how you did yesterday to be able to provide more insight towards what we're working to today. In day 1, 2, 3, 4, you may be at a goal of like 5, for example, and that might take you the full hour to work through. But 5 after a month or two, it's only going to take you about 20 minutes. So we would want to work up and kind of build that goal to get a bit higher. And we work with the families in terms of how that looks. Teacher helps to motivate each student in unique ways based on their needs and builds a relationship with them. Engagement really is a secret sauce, though. You only get in what you put it, you only get out what you put in. So we want to make sure that engagement is happening. Enrollment really doesn't do anything. You got to put the work in to see the changes. Teachers get to know students as individuals. We don't currently use AI in place of genuine relationship building. Um, yes, there is a time and a place as we continue to evolve and where that can help out to ensure that we can reduce the ratios and provide more opportunities to more people. However, we're not in a place to do that at this point, and we feel like the sacrifice of having those genuine relationships, we need to ensure that that's happening authentically, and we're not putting something in place just to be able to serve more people at a specific time. So students can change classes based on the availability. However, we can't jump around from class to class during the week. And the reason that we don't allow that is the teachers need to be able to predict the student needs and get to know them very well. So if we have a different student base in each class, that can change how we're predicting needs, and we're not going to be able to meet the needs of the students in the best way. If we know who's going to be in the class and we can predict it, and we can set those goals up and really work with the group that we have, it's best practice to be able to get the outcomes that we're looking for. If a certain time at any time isn't working, you can change classes if there's availability. However, if you're changing class, you're changing to that class, and the teacher knows you're going to be there every day. Sports happen. There's different extracurriculars that happen. We understand times need to change throughout the year, and that's great. We do have the opportunity. We just can't jump around during the week. So this is essentially kind of what a class would look like from a student's perspective as they're working. So they'd be coming in, they'd be getting a goal from their teacher that they understand that they're working towards. So in this situation, Michael's has the goal of 10 sets at 90%. We're cheering them on. We're there for them, providing motivation in certain ways. They would have a little call here. You see me in my white tee. ready to go, ready to work with a student. So you'd have a camera up where I'm popping in and out of your call as you're working on your Arrowsmith program on the side. So it's not overcomplicated in terms of how things are set up and what they look like. You have Teams and a call within Teams. You're communicating through the chat system within Microsoft Teams, and you're working on your program on the side. So cognitive areas that we address in terms of executive functions, we'd really be working on like processing information, problem solving, working memory, social skills, managing overwhelm, organization, prioritization, comprehension. There's more to executive function than that, but that's kind of where our big focus would be with executive function. And then we also have our foundational skills, reading ability, writing, math, memory, pronunciation, recognition. Some of these are a little overlapping. In terms of looking at some of these foundational skills, it's kind of the filter in which the information comes in. So if we're looking at like math here, for example, you could say like, well, math, it does take a lot of executive function to do it, and absolutely does. But if we're looking at like a word problem, that's more of a reading comprehension issue that would be more executive function focused, right? But the rote math and remembering math facts and understanding simple equations is more of a foundational skill. So a lot of these we can really improve to work, like if we're working on reading comprehension, if the reading ability is not at a place where we need it to be, we might address that first as kind of a prerequisite. Um, Same thing with memory, pronunciation, and recognition. So we'll do an assessment to kind of figure out which way to start as we move towards working on executive function for 95% of students. So why is this work important? So life is a lot easier when you have support, especially with people with diagnosed learning issues or the neurodivergent population, where supports are being put in place. So that could be families, teacher, admin, aides, that can be OTs, that can be a variety of people that are providing supports within your life, and even the supports themselves can be that level of support. So in this situation, he doesn't have too much weight on there. It's a controlled environment where the teacher, let's say here, the family member is really helping out for the safety of the individual. And it's a controlled amount of weight that it's not going to hurt him. Everyone's kind of safe, and he's used to getting this level of support. Everyone gets a bit older. We don't have the same supports as we had in the past. What happens in that situation? Are we still able to thrive without that? So in this situation, smart decisions really weren't made. Too much weight was put on. There was no support there to help. And because of that, injuries can happen. And that can lead to mental health issues. That can lead to putting ourselves in certain situations we don't want to be in or making poor choices. So, are we really setting everyone up for success by providing a lot of support at a younger age without the supports later? Or do we want to build up cognition to be able to have that independence, to make smart choices, to be able to fend for ourselves, and to be able to reach these big goals we might have with realistic intention, realistic outcome? So to do this is kind of equation. So targeted interventions, which is what Arrowsmith would be, plus effortful processing. So putting that effort in. If you times that by neuroplasticity, then you're developing capabilities that promote and support independence. And that's a major goal of many people coming in. And that's what our goal is as well. So what do we know about neuroplasticity? So a big one that's been around for years and years is neurons that fire together, wire together. So fire together would mean that they are working as a group, and as they're working, they reach out to connect, and that helps our brain understand and process new information and be able to connect with different neurons within the brain. So repetitive exercise that stimulates specific regions of the brain can help improve functional connectivity. And functional connectivity versus overconnectivity is a thing that we like to look at. So functional would mean that it's working well, whereas there can be an overconnectivity where there's too much going on that it's not functional. And we see that sometimes where there's just too many things in the day. How do I get through all of this? How am I gonna manage these issues and these things that are coming up? We have a situation then where amygdala is then coming in, either shutting down, running away, or fighting our way through these things. So that wouldn't be an example of functional. That would be over connectivity in the regions. So what we want to do is get that down to a functional level. Less is kind of more, but you want the less to be stronger. And the subconscious job of the brain is to figure out how to complete any task with the least amount of energy. We don't know this is happening, but if you think about like riding a bike, driving a car, when we're first learning these tasks, it takes a lot of energy and effort and fear and trial and error. Eventually, you can just do it without thinking. That's our brain's way of figuring out anything that we do. So the brain always tries to find a way. It's continuing to try to find a way to do things this way. That's where some of that overconnectivity can happen because it doesn't know the best pathway to take. But once it does find that way that's efficient and functional, it will strengthen that connection. So that's what we're focused on in terms of the regions of the brain that we're associating with. Neuroplasticity is great. We hear it's been a buzzword for probably about 20 years, but it's not always positive. We can really strengthen some negative networks. So that's what you see in my example at the start with post-traumatic stress. That connection, the more we're living in that, is creating that neural connection. So it does take time to be able to get out to get to the prefrontal cortex. So we want to avoid fight or flight in our amygdala in these situations and just control the information as it comes in. When there's an imbalance in the brain can be overfiring and noisy. And we do want a balance. We want both sides of the brain to be equal. We want the brain to be working together as a cohesive unit and not relying on certain areas to do more work than the other. Without recognizing where the relationships are code within the root, it will continue to search for new pathways, which can overload certain parts of the brain. So when one part of the brain is overworking and one is underworking, the overworking area sometimes can try to take over for the task it's not meant to do. And when a brain area is doing now twice as much work or more, it tires out, it gets exhausted, and that's when we can go to fight or flight in situations where we're not in any trouble. So the brain efficiency happens when the brain has strong pathways and balance through executive functioning regions, and tasks come naturally with limited energy required. So the exercises that we kind of do to target executive function and create this balance are L-think or left thinking. So the left side of the brain is called symbolic thinking. The right side is nonverbal thinking. The link between those two through the corpus callosum, which is like a thick band or belt that helps connect the two hemispheres of the brain, is called clocks and symbol relations. And the connection for our working memory is called predicative speech, which helps us take in a lot of language and organize our language to be able to get it out. So when these are all balanced, we see our students, and we see that within our testing, our students thriving with independence because these areas are all working and doing the job as they should and not relying on lower networks that aren't meant to do those jobs, to do the jobs of the executive functions. How we process the data within this would be, so this is kind of an example of a student who had an initial rating of severe and looking at symbol relations, which is the clocks exercise, and their current rating went up to an average score. So what the outcome was the ability to make connection between ideas, comprehend, understand logical and conceptual relationships, such as cause and effect, and reason mathematically. These students, when they do reach this, they do see quite a bit of changes in terms of independence. But this is kind of how we're designing in terms of how our testing looks. So students are assessed within the first month to determine if the brain areas associated with Arrowsmith are working at an average level for their age. And the data informs the priorities of exercises we recommend depending on the student's needs and goals. But we have a big meeting with this. When we first meet, it's all hypothetical. We're just talking about the program such as now and providing information of how it could look. But we don't know much until we have the data through the assessment and see some data coming in over the first month. And from the student perspective, you don't really know how this is going to work for you, how it's going to work for your family, and how it's going to work with the dynamic of doing it at home. So we come together with more of that information to create those priorities and goals together, where both of us have more of a frame of reference of how that would look. So online, our students typically choose between 1 and 3 areas, which is 1 to 3 hours per day. Vast majority choose one, and we kind of work with one through the year, either before or after school or in a resource room at school for adults around their work schedules or retirement schedules. It really depends on when it works for them. And we use these networks just like a physical exercise when we're working through them. So we reassess students at the culmination, which is what you see up here, to determine A, the rate of progress, B, the quantitative and qualitative changes associated with the exercise, and then create next steps. Every month throughout the academic year, we're sending home reports. So we can see the daily engagement on it. We're quite data rich. We do have data for everything that's going on. I can see minute to minute what's happening, and we store that information as well. So we do provide information on the daily engagement here, and the goals, and kind of track that along different measurement tools here for a benchmark and a mastery goal, as well as mastery graph and trends. So we can see over time, how are things changing? Are they improving? Are we seeing students move up towards that mastery goal? When we use the term mastery, that just means essentially you've reached a numeric goal within the program that is now saying the brain is working efficiently based on this task to the point where we need to create a new challenge. So we've reached the goal of now I've learned how to ride my bike. So what am I going to do next? Right? We're not putting energy to the task anymore because it's becoming too easy. So now we need to make it more complicated. The brain doesn't change when we reach a mastery. The brain doesn't change when we reach the end of a level. So it's hard to say like the end of this level is when we would stop. It's all about creating that challenge, and the challenge creates the change. So our big goal is to really continue to see movement through all the levels, because that's showing the brain is getting more efficient, and the more efficient it gets, the easier it is to process new information. And kind of the outcomes, it can take time to restructure the brain. The same way it would take time if you signed up for the gym. You're not going to, day one, you're not getting the muscles you need. You need to be there. You need to be using the equipment over time. But our research has shown that over 3 to 4 months, the brain noise within the prefrontal cortex can come down. And we saw this initially in some brain injury research, which we replicated in learning disability and learning challenge as well, to show that the prefrontal cortex, through EEG readings, the electrical information from right to left, was showing 5 to 10 times more electrical activity. After about 3 to 4 months, that was coming down to a normal level. So when the brain's not overstimulated and overworking, now you can actually engage in tasks for longer periods of time. So that's where that 3 to 4 months comes in. After that point, now we're strengthening that network. So then it's going to take time to build that up like a muscle and strengthen that network. So depending on the number of areas that require support, the duration of the program can change, and that's all kind of figured out within the assessment process. And the goal for most students would be to reach average in the brain area being exercised. But we also notice that sometimes students get to average and they're still not plateauing, they're still seeing improvements. So we do, in that case, have that conversation of staying on an exercise beyond average. It really needs to match the cognitive changes we're seeing in your everyday life. The qualitative assessment is so important to be able to understand that. We have a number of exercises, but we typically are starting out on exercise called symbol relations, or clocks, which is quite famous within the Arrowsmith network for those who have done any research on what Arrowsmith is. And the reason we work on this is very similar to like a treadmill. So a treadmill, nobody gets on a treadmill so that they can be a better treadmill runner. Everyone gets on the treadmill for a different goal. And typically that's like losing weight, better cardiovascular health, better fitness, a way to run in the winter and not have to be out in the cold. There's different reasons. None of those are because I want to get faster at running on a treadmill. When we're reading a clock in that way, like, it's, yes, you're going to get faster at reading time. However, it's what happens within the brain and the outcomes that is the reason why we're doing that activity. So many students begin on clocks because clocks really helps to connect the prefrontal cortex. So if I scan back here for a second, if I'm looking at this clock here, My right brain is really firing up when it reads symbols, and our right brain reads more like emotions and empathy and understanding how others are feeling, how we're feeling. So that would mean if you're watching me and I'm smiling, you might say, "Oh, he's happy." He may be embarrassed. There's different emotions that can come with that smile, but the smile gives a clue to what I'm feeling. Okay, so that's a symbol. And the way that the brain would read the clock in terms of the right hemisphere would be those circles and lines because it's reading those symbols. If I'm looking at the left side is more numerical, organization, detail management, time management, organization. It's very data heavy. And our left brain is more reading the numbers on the clock and organizing the spaces with the numbers. So by doing that, it's forcing the right brain and the left brain to communicate, which helps to create a better network across the brain and our right and our left prefrontal cortex. And research has shown that when the area that the student's working on for their age of the student, that there's less noise within the prefrontal cortex, which helps with focus and stamina. So by working on that and having that better connection from right to left, we're actually seeing the overactivity reduce and more functional activity come in from right to left. The outcomes of working on this activity could be improved comprehension, processing speed, better mathematical reasoning, being able to reason more abstractly in general, being able to get jokes and irony, having more of those aha moments and understanding how things kind of piece together and how they work together, understanding the world around them with greater ease, which then increases self-esteem. You know what you're watching, you understand the world at a better pace, which can take improve a lot of things. There is something to be said about improved self-esteem in terms of um, being able to go into new situations, uh, be able to process new information. Mental health is in a crisis right now, so having the brain balance and working efficiently can actually take some of the pressure off some of those areas to really help the person and be happier. We've done a lot of research. I won't go through all of these areas, but there's a number of areas, and this is just one of the research projects that we've done where we see improvements across the board within executive functions, within improvements on a number of normed assessments. So we do see great improvement in terms of the general abilities. Feel free to take a screenshot of this if you're interested in kind of learning more, but all of the research is available on the Arrowsmith website as well. Again, these are our times for our classes in the 25-26 year, and a little reminder of our registration options that are available. If you are interested in connecting with us, Sandra Huso will be the one to really give you that information to start as our admission director. My email is there as well if you have questions for me specific to any topics from this conversation or this presentation. But again, I'll leave kind of on this screen here. With the information that you might need for choosing class times and understanding. You don't need to stay in the class time if you register for it. You can move around as you need. Classes are Monday to Thursday, and we're open about 48 hours of the year, 48 weeks of the year, with options throughout to make it fit your needs. So again, Sandra would be your main contact to get more information on admission. And thank you for watching today. And we look forward to hearing from you.